this network that kind of sit around mothers, I was like, no one's speaking to them. No one's like saying, hello, these 2 billion mothers across the world, they are navigating the biggest life transition they will go through in secret, in private, behind closed doors, because no one has the language and no one is telling you what's happening. So that's kind of like where I'm going with my mission within the Matrescence project.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Gilchrist, your host of Brave Conversations, a series of conversations with people who have chosen to be brave in their lives. Through 20 years working with leaders and organisations, I've learned that the world needs brave people. Those brave enough to reflect and admit they might be scared, but act anyway. Brave enough to challenge what isn't working. Brave enough to choose possibility, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. So, if you've been waiting for permission to make a change or wondering if you have what it takes, this is for you. So, hello, Beth. Thank you for joining me today. This is very exciting because we're going to talk about matrescence. And I'm a bit of a newbie to matrescence, or the concept of it. I am a mother, so I have been through it. And we met, and I learnt about the concept of matrescence through you. And suddenly I was like, "Ooh, gosh, that would have been quite helpful when I went through this 20 odd years ago." And so this episode is really, I'd like to explore that concept, but also you, because I know that this is a thing and you've got a slightly different take on it, which I think is really exciting. And the whole thing is pretty brave. So in this conversation, let's go for it. So welcome, Beth.
Yes.
So do you want to tell me a bit about matrescence then, and what brought you to it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So my name's Beth. I refer to myself now as a matrescence educator. So I've been studying matrescence since I first discovered it 2001, been discussing it and kind of studying it since then. And I am the founder of the Matrescence project. So I've kind of put all my work into a project. Matrescence is, by definition, it's the process of becoming a mother. So it's like the psychological, the hormonal, the physiological stages. It's actually like a developmental transition, if you want to call it that. I think the closest thing we can compare it to is adolescence. So just like when you are a child and you become an adult, you go through adolescence, and that's not discriminatory. Everybody goes through it. Every single person kind of has to go through that life transition. And in the same way, when a woman becomes a mother, she goes through matrescence. Matrescence is referred to as like the forgotten transition. So not many people know about it. Like you said, you hadn't heard of it. And I think that's where I saw an issue, in that I see so many mothers struggling and questioning themselves and feeling like they're failing in what is this kind of like big process. And actually, it's because they don't have the words or the language to explain how they feel.
I'm assuming because you're a mother and that you knew instinctively that there was this big change, and then you heard about matrescence. Or did you hear about matrescence and then go, "Oh, that's interesting," and then click it back? How did it
Yeah.
click with you?
So I became a mum 10 years ago, and I found it really, really tough. I don't know if I knew at the time the extent of the kind of struggle I had ahead of me. My pregnancy was fine. I was at the right age. It didn't come as a shock that I was going to be a mom. But from the minute I had my daughter, things just felt different. And I was like, wow, things have really changed. And it was quite instant for me. And I kind of battled my way through a little bit, struggling with the constant change, the lack of structure. There was no process. There was nothing I could follow. It all felt quite alien. I was struggling with kind of the constant kind of shifts and changes. Things were changing constantly, like my job, my position in the world, like relationships, my social life. But I was just like, oh, maybe this is just how it's meant to be. And like, I was looking around thinking, well, everyone else seems to be all right. Maybe it's me. And then I remember it so vividly. I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw an Australian lady talk about this process that every woman who becomes a mother goes through. It's an ancient yet modern concept, and it's something that isn't spoken about, but it's the process everyone goes through when they become a mum, and it's called matrescence. And I was like, in the moment, I was like, oh my God, this is everything I feel. And it just gave me a label, like a name to put to how I felt. And in that moment, I just felt this relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And honestly, from that point on, I just feel like my whole path through motherhood has felt different.
That's amazing. And so it's not just your path through motherhood, of course. You're now actually making that this is your path, isn't it? So you have a job, you've worked in different industries. Tell me a little bit about your history there then.
So I think it is quite ironic, really, because I think my background so I was a management consultant at Deloitte. I've always worked in kind of like quite big roles, quite structured, process driven, lots of like change management. And I actually think that that lent into some part into why I struggled with motherhood so much, because it's that kind of masculine, feminine kind of like clash. And then obviously when I discovered matrescence, I just felt this burning desire I, it was like instantly my life was changed by hearing matrescence. But weirdly, instantly I knew I had to do something with this. So I'd had like this background in management consulting. And when I became pregnant, I had the girls, like there was a bit of a shift in careers and moving around. And I work full time in construction at the minute. So kind of jumping into the Matrescence project, working with mothers, working in quite a feminine led space was almost like two worlds colliding. It couldn't be two more extremes. But I think that's what's made me more passionate about speaking up and being quite confident to be able to speak up in a space that, like a lot of matrescence kind of feminine women led spaces, like they whisper the soft words of motherhood. And that's just, well, A, it's not my personality, but B, working in corporate and working in these masculine spaces, that doesn't really get you heard. So I kind of came in like a bit of a whirlwind, like, okay, like we're not whispering this. I'm like, we're shouting it from the rooftops. And everyone's a bit like, okay, who's this northern girl kind of shouting matrescence across dance floors? And I think, yeah, there was just that instant kind of difference in what I brought to matrescence and this quite kind of like motherhood space because of my background.
So tell me, what is it about it that you want to do with it? Because I know, like you say, those who may be whispering, those who may be using it as a coaching method, or those who are with new mothers, or what is it that you actually want to do with it?
So I believe 100% there is a need in the world for women and matrescence educated coaches to be able to support mothers and new mothers. Like it's like a match made in heaven. Mothers need it and the people offering that as a service need it. But again, because of how my mind works, because of my background and how I am, I immediately didn't see that as my path. I was just like, no, like sitting in the depths of the cracks and the complexities of that kind of really raw motherhood space. It just wasn't my thing. It just wasn't my skill set. It wasn't how I roll. Like it just didn't feel quite right. And I kind of felt like I stood on the edge a little bit and looked into this space. And it really dawned on me quite early that mothers can do the work on matrescence and learning about the process of becoming a mother. And that's important. But if they're all doing it and the rest of the world has no idea what's going on, how can anyone help? And this dawned on me quite quickly because I was like, I see all the women doing matrescence and matrescence workshops and matrescence coaching. And I was like, but you're going home on a night and not speaking to your husband about it because he ain't got a clue. And I really set out on a bit of a mission to be like, it's important that mums know it, but it's actually like as important that workplaces understand it, managers know about it, men understand it, men get it, like partners and families, professionals. This network that kind of sit around mothers, I was like, no one's speaking to them. No one's like saying, hello, these 2 billion mothers across the world, they are navigating the biggest life transition they will go through in secret, in private, behind closed doors, because no one has the language and no one is telling you what's happening. So that's kind of like where I'm going with my mission within the Matrescence Project.
That's brilliant because actually, I mean, obviously, my interest here, particularly in brave conversations, is challenging the status quo. So for you, there's two challenges. That matrescence itself is essentially challenging the status quo because it's recognizing that there is actually a process or a transformation that women go through. But even as a relatively, I suppose, industry, if you can call it that, you're all actually
Yeah.
challenging the status quo that's already arriving from that, which is it's not just about those who are going through the transformation because everybody else is as well. And that they need to
Yeah.
understand what on earth is going on. Otherwise, it's always going to be them and us or huddles of mothers complaining
Yes.
or feeling whatever they're feeling about without being negative about mothers at all. I find that really interesting. What do you think? What have you had to unlearn in this process?
I think, and this has been a recent thing for me. So I am going through my matrescence whilst trying to build the Matrescence project. And there's been something in that for me in terms of like previously with work. I was always like very direct, very get it done, times allocated in 30-minute slots, performance management. Like we go in, we find a problem, we fix it, we get paid, we leave. And it's quite fast paced. And when you become a mum, so in terms of like my own matrescence journey, all of that just disappears. Like all of those rules that you are governed by or that have given you success, I think, in the corporate world or in the life before becoming a mum, all those skills just don't work in motherhood. I'm like, what? You mean we can't do like a rota of when the baby's going to sleep? No, because they sleep whenever they want. It's like, what? Like, I thought we could process map this. No, we can't. So in terms of my matrescence journey, I had to unlearn all of the skills about control, like the constant changing nature of everything, the lack of structure, and like being a lot more patient and like I've always been quite independent. So like if I want something doing, I'll do it myself. It's like you can't do everything in motherhood. So I talk a lot about shared strength, sharing the strength, being dependent. You really need to share this out. It's impossible to do it alone. So all those things I've unlearned. But I mean, some of those things are obviously make a mum. We need all of those incredible traits as well. But obviously, setting up the Matrescence project at the same time, I've had to learn that this business looks different. This business hasn't been driven by efficiency or productivity. I mean, in terms of monetizing it, that's been a whole thing in itself. So kind of the business 101 that I was used to pre-motherhood in the Matrescence project space is also really different as well.
And so what does that mean for you? I mean, what's been the biggest, I suppose, part of the journey for you in that?
At the minute, it's about monetizing what is in essence something. It's a bit of like a tricky conversation because it's like, this idea of monetizing community and monetizing knowledge and monetizing these ancient. It's like, can you monetize adolescence? Can you monetize menopause? Obviously, people have monetized menopause and that's a huge industry. So I'm just working through really what do I believe the solution is for mothers to be able to support them in navigating the process. And what does the solution look like for workplaces to be able to support the mother? And leaning back into my consulting days, I've managed to put together a really nice framework, which I'm so excited to put out to the world because this is like, I haven't told anyone this. I'm telling you this because it's really exciting. I've actually made a map of matrescence. So I have a map of matrescence that it makes the invisible visible. It
Okay.
makes the unsaid said. It makes the unclear clear. It's like a map of these like 8 areas that every woman, when she becomes a mother, will navigate. And it's incredible for the mum to be able to see where she is on that map, where she might be going, maybe where she's been. But then when you lay over the lens of like corporate and what that looks like from a workplace, so that when a woman returns back to work, can you imagine if her manager can sit and be like, I can see where you've been. I can see you're a different person now, and that, your social relationships are different or your career aspirations are different. Then you lay over the lens of the man or men being able to sit and look at this map. And actually, everyone becomes a lot more informed. And that's my kind of gift, I guess, to the world through the Matrescence Project is the map of matrescence.
That's brilliant. And I suppose it's making it a thing to be able to have a conversation about rather than a
Yeah.
thing to just ignore and get on with, like has happened for generations, isn't it? And so it's enabling an employer or a partner or a husband or a
Yeah.
father or a mother. I mean, it must be lovely actually generationally to be able to have conversations as well for maybe mothers of an older generation who haven't gone through this, as well as, yeah, I love the idea that you've done a map because it
Yeah. I
makes it a
think,
thing.
yeah. And I think that's where, for me, Brave comes into the conversation because there is a lot of noise at the minute around the motherhood space where I feel like there's a lot of what I call like validation. So plenty of people are willing to validate a mother's experience, that being, I see you, I can relate to you, and mothers feel seen. And I do think that is a really important part for mothers to be able to feel seen by others and they can relate to their experience. So like I might say, motherhood is really hard. And everyone goes, oh my God, yes, it is. That's the validation. And I think where Brave comes into this motherhood conversation is, well, at the minute, mothers are drowning in validation. We know the world's saying, this is really tough. We get it. Modern day motherhood is the hardest it's ever been. So we're drowning in validation, but starving for solutions because nobody's brave enough to say, I've got something that's going to help you.
Hmm.
Other than the coaching conversation or like there may be a journal prompt, which is part of the conversation for sure. And I think, again, this is where my years of kind of background consulting, building frameworks, mapping processes has come in because I've been able to bring the two together and say, actually, here's a framework that you're gonna be able to like use it as like an orientation tool. You're gonna use it as like a location. You can see yourself within that picture. And then here's some ideas and strategies and initiatives to be able to help you move through it.
That's really exciting. So what is that? What can you see that might look like for you then, or the Matrescence project? What are the
The
possibilities?
plan. Yeah, and that's where it gets really exciting. And I think that's where, again, it's been brave in terms of, I guess it's like as a woman and as a mother. So if I lean into my matrescence journey, when I found it tough, and becoming a mum, I would say completely changed me, but I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know I was going through what is an irreversible transition, by the way. You don't go back, which is quite a tough pill to swallow. It's like I looked to get back to my old life constantly. And one day I was just like, she's not coming back. I was like, I'm not going back there. Right. Okay. And like, it was a bit bigger than that, but in a nutshell. But I think like going through that process, your confidence does take a hit. And being a mum, especially in the modern day, all the different angles that it's coming at you from, it is quite tough. And a lot of women and mothers that I speak to, you do feel quite disconnected from yourself and who you were before. And you do think, God, she was used to have loads of fun. Like she was really confident. And I often look at myself like that and I'm a bit like, oh gosh. And a lot of the times I find myself maybe not speaking up where I could, or maybe not saying what I really think because I'm either tired, I haven't got the capacity or the energy all the time because I'm focusing on two children now. I have been able to tune back into using my voice, being brave, speaking up and saying what I want to achieve and be what I actually think.
Do you think that's because you have clarity about what you're doing? Do you think that's about the stage you are in understanding your own matrescence? Is it a bit of both?
Yeah, you've got it because it is that magical crossover. And I've just been doing this at the minute is me going through my own matrescence journey. So my eldest daughter turns 10 or is 10, sorry. And this has been like quite a big year for me in terms of my youngest daughter. She turns 7. So the 7-year mark for mothers is a big, big transition point. And I do feel this almost, I can breathe. We've made it. And I do feel like capacity and brain wise and sleep, I'm getting more sleep, and all those different factors have come together and have meant that in my own matrescence journey, I definitely feel like I've moved into a new season. I like to think of matrescence in seasons, like motherhood in seasons. Plus, I have been chipping away at the matrescence project since 2021. And I joke about my business was established in 2021 and launched in 2026. Like, what have you been doing in between? But it's taken me that long to just get clear, like to navigate through in the motherhood industry, and I know there's the health and wellness, or there's the coaching industry, there's all these different pockets. And I think you can become really consumed in them. And you can see other people doing lots of other stuff. And it takes quite a lot to take a step back and be like, what have I got to give here? What's my point of view in this space? And I've just took my time with,
That's another bit I would say is really brave as well. Is, I established this in 2021, it's now 2026, and that's okay. Because,
mm,
it's always been, well, she founded this business and it was earning 10K in a month within the first 6 months of being of launching, and super successful, blah, blah, blah. And there's that pressure that you have to be successful with a short space of time because you've got the right idea. It's like going at the pace that you need to go to, because this is something that happened to you or happened upon you, isn't it? An idea that has just been like, what does that mean? Where can it go? And there doesn't have to be a pressure that it has to be all there and answered in a one. And in a way, therefore, the foundations that you have been building over the last 5 years are much sturdier because you've been working it out and going, yeah, well, what value am I putting to the world right now? What's my role in this? How am I doing it? And now you've got that energy of going, right, well, this is it. I'm launching. How exciting. And I can see what the possibilities are, and have the confidence to go with it.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think making your peace with this kind of winding road that is entrepreneurship, that is for me in the motherhood space, like this business, or I kind of call it a project because I've never really And this is, again, like it's one of these juxtapositions. I've spent years in businesses, fixing businesses, making businesses profitable, working on business strategies. And I remember when I did like GCSE business studies all those years ago, like I'm talking like, I don't know, like 30 years ago. I remember the business studies teacher saying, like, number one rule in business, you've got to make profit. If you don't make profit, there is no point. And I was like, actually, this isn't that. This never was that, even though that's all of my life's work was building up to making a profitable business. And I know how to do that really well. This was always different. This always felt like a legacy project almost, where I was like, I want my daughters to be able to say, gosh, our mum, changed the world for mums, or like, she had an impact on making a difference. And that means a real lot to me in the sense of the Matrescence project. But don't get me wrong, I'm a business person at heart. So I really want this to be able to be successful in the sense that I can do it more regularly, because I actually have a full-time job in construction at the minute. So I want to get rid of that hard hat. Don't let my husband hear me say that. And I would love to do this. And, ultimately, being realistic, this has to, if I want to do it more and I want to put more effort and more time in and have this impact, there has to be that business aspect to it. But this is driven from a purpose. This is driven genuinely. I set out to do this to make sure that no other mum felt like I felt in those first couple of years, and no mum sits there and questions herself like I did, when actually I know she's not failing. She's going through matrescence. She's not doing a bad job. She's going through matrescence. And I just felt like once I knew this information, I was like, I can't keep this to myself. Like, this is too important to just kind of pass off and take the easier route, which would have been to just take all the goodness for myself, change my own journey and, get crack on making loads of money in another job. I was like, no, this feels too important. Like, I have to speak up. I have to find a way to tell the world about this.
Yeah, and that really comes across as well. And so again, it goes to those building of those foundations, because they will be really strong, and the fact that people will therefore value you for it and want to pay for it in whichever way that they do, because actually it all makes sense. Something that just sort of struck me while you're talking is Matrescence, or the people that you are focusing on in terms of the mothers, and you've been talking about the workplace, do you think that there is more of a contrast for those who have been in careers before they become mothers than, say, those who haven't?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So it's really tricky. With matrescence, I have these principles that I think it's really important to understand. The first principle is it's not optional. Every woman will go through matrescence. It doesn't discriminate. You can be anywhere in the world. You could be an 18-year-old, a 45-year-old. You're going to go through matrescence. That's how it is. But the second principle is every mother's journey is different. So the reason why I think sometimes it's so hard to get traction on people understanding it is because every mother's journey through matrescence is different. It's quite hard to relate. So you might have two women who are both really strong business women who you might think would deal with matrescence in the same way, because they've lived very masculine lives. They've maybe been very kind of monetary driven, but one of them may have had a really close family, a really large family whose mum and dad are still alive, and she's got that kind of support network. The other one may have lost both of her parents and has moved away and lives geographically further away. So that variable will then completely change how they will navigate matrescence. And they're just a couple of variables. There are so many that mean that every mother's journey through is different, even down to like maybe how your birth went down, or, whether you like breastfed or didn't, or, if you maybe took maternity or didn't. There's all these different factors. However, to answer your question, I do believe that women who are generally, I'd say it's not necessarily that they have careers. It's the personality traits that go along with the women who drive for higher positions within a career pre having a baby. So we're generally perfectionists, quite controlling, super independent. All of those personality traits on a real general level jar with motherhood. And I think that's where I would say women, these kind of like high achieving women, feel a more intense push and pull through their matrescence journey when that masculine and feminine really clash a little bit.
And therefore, when they return back to work, then it's even more of a clash because they're not going back to what they were or who they were beforehand. And their colleagues or who they're working for also, if they're not aware of it, will suddenly realize that that person isn't coming back. It's a different person who may have different priorities, etc.
I love how you have just put that. I love how you've put that, because that is it. So even on the map of matrescence, there's this kind of area or zone, which is this kind of like inner knowing. And I want to say, it's not really spiritual, but it's this level of motherhood that is unlocked, which, like you say, it's priorities. It's this bigger question in life. It's time and how you feel about how you spend your time and things like that. And ultimately, every mother feels the push and pull of that. And, you know, the fact that I led to earlier, which is the matrescence is this irreversible transition. There'll still be elements that you had before, which are still you, like they don't disappear, but your priorities and how you see the world and how you want to spend your time and, all of the things that come along with that really high driven kind of career status are questioned. And I think there is an assumption, particularly by corporate workplaces, which is you're returning the same person you were. And as hard as it is to hear, that you're not, that person has changed. And I think ultimately that's one of the key understandings that I want to get across with matrescence, is that these women are kind of navigating this on their own, and they're trying to explain to their husbands why it all feels so different to them. And the husbands just are a bit like, I don't get it. Like, she's being weird. She's thingy. She don't want to come out. She might not want to drink.
And also, they'll be like, well, I've been through it too. So, I've gone through a big change. The
Yeah,
change that you've been through as a
exactly.
husband will be different.
It really is different. And I think there is, and I will, there is matrescence, and the father or the dad, the men, they do go through it. It's not an area that I'm interested in supporting them with. My take on it is I want men to understand matrescence. The question I always get asked if I've been to events and workshops and there is a man in the room, he always says, is there a male version of this? And I say there is. And it's called matrescence, but immediately they turn the lens. It's like, when you do your camera and you turn it on yourself to do like a selfie. I'm like, no, 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 no. Turn that camera back round. Look at your partner or wife or, mother of your child. It's about the man understanding what she goes through in order to be able to support her. And that can be as easy as, and I often say this doesn't have to be really deep work for the support network of women. Sometimes it's just understanding that there's a common language. It's understanding there's a word to explain it. And just by having that one word, you get this, it's something. Oh, that's what that is. And actually navigating the experience with a common language just feels a lot easier.
Yeah, I get that completely. And I love the fact that you're saying that you turn the lens back again. This isn't about the lens being on you. You turn it back. It's back about the
And I feel
relationship.
awful saying that, but I'm a bit like, just, yeah, all right, you go through it as well, like kind of. And there are, like, I could go into it because there are studies that say that the brain of a man, like the brain of a woman when she goes through matrescence irreversibly changes. So it's rewired. There's evidence. I think it's current studies show scans of women's brains and how the grey matter and the kind of like shape and size of the brain changes. And that change doesn't return, which kind of is evidence that supports the theory of matrescence. And in some studies, what you will see is that the man's brain doesn't change as quickly as the woman's. But over time, as the baby kind of integrates into the life of the family, what you will see is some changes in the man's nervous system. You know, there's kind of like subtle brain changes, like that hyper awareness. And the reason I know this is because what I was more interested in is actually adoptive parents. Because
Mm.
what you find with parents is that they will go through matrescence or a form of matrescence in the same way a mother would, but there's just that bit of a time lag in the
And
same way there is for the man. So, yeah, so I do sympathise and I do agree that matrescence has its place, but for me, matrescence is very focused on the mother. Like, I do joke about my lack of maternal instinct, and this isn't about the baby either. I'm very much like matrensic focused, as in focused on the mother. It's a process the mother goes through. I can't tell you how to wean your baby, how to get it to sleep. Like, that is not my zone. And same for the matrescence.
and I love that as well, because when we talk about motherhood, often we're talking about when you have a baby, and a baby doesn't last for very long, really. Motherhood lasts forever. And so it's that idea of
Yeah.
actually being who is the woman that you are in that change, because actually you have a role now, and you have to be able to respond, and it's not just about nurturing a baby, because there is much more to it.
Yeah, like I have a concept called the dual dimension of motherhood, and I always start with this kind of like it's almost like a reprogramming of the definition of motherhood, because it's a term we use that encompasses a lot. And to me, being a mother is the doing. So it's the nappies, it's the feeding, it's the keeping the baby alive, it's the sleep, getting them to sleep, those type of things. And that's separate and that's over here. And then at the other side of this dual dimension of motherhood is becoming a mother. And actually, the becoming a mother point is quite separate to the baby, even though one's brought on by the other. And that is matrescence. And that's kind of the mother's journey. And you're right, the length of matrescence, and it's so timely because only this morning did I have two women who have both got, I think one's kids are in the 20s, the other ones have like gone to uni, and they said, we didn't really think the matrescence project was relevant to us. And actually, I was speaking about the concept of the inner split, which is a theory within matrescence about how women at certain points in their lives have what we call an inner split. And that could come at maybe when you return to work after maternity. So that is really in that baby phase. But an inner split could come when your child's 4 and goes off to school and you feel that, that like that moment. It could be, and this is what they were talking about, you know, a child's gone off to uni and your heart, there's that inner split of, oh my God, because you're still a mother, you are still mothering, but it's that journey of like your own kind of becoming of a mother. And I had an inner split that the day my daughter was born. The day my daughter was born, I knew I was different. It's something just clicked that day. But not everyone has that. And it's really interesting how throughout the course of your life, like you say, you're a mother, it's a transition and a process that goes on for, well, forever.
Yeah, I love that, because it's a prism within which we look at that role. And I think that we tend to put a lot of gravity on the a mother as in the early years, or in actually increasingly in adolescence as well, because that's quite a large role, I think, in motherhood if you're of adolescence. But
Yeah.
so you as you were saying before, you started in 2021 and you're just about to launch as you feel it is now. In the moment when you kind of doubted your path, what's brought you back?
So I have learned from someone who is super independent, doing it all. I can do it all, superwoman, don't need any help. I'm fine. That actually, this business, as I see it, this kind of like legacy project, this kind of like passion project, I cannot do it alone. And I have learned that having and leaning on, becoming dependent on people to kind of support me in those moments has been critical. Like I saw a thing that said it's actually like proven scientifically that you can borrow hope. And I was like, I love this. So if you're feeling hopeless and you're a bit like, oh, this just isn't happening. If you speak to a friend or you've got a community you can lean on and they are really hopeful and they are even hopeful in their own ways, not even in relation to you and your business, you can like pull that from them. And I've really felt that with the communities that I've been involved in through the Matrescence project. I have, and it's a mutual friend of ours, leaning into understanding my story has been a crutch for sure, because that's where I get a lot of my strength in knowing that this is the right path because it's in my story.
Do you think that in the olden days when we lived in communities that that wouldn't have been as much as a thing? Because I think we're so independent now that we're almost
Yeah.
taught. It's I relate to it a lot. It's almost been a badge of, well, I can do that on my own. I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly going, actually, things may be easier if I do lean on someone else or ask. And I love the concept of borrowing hope as well. I mean, hope that with my theory of brave, hope and possibility versus fear.
Yeah.
So borrowing hope when you need it most is a wonderful concept. But I do wonder if we collectively have just become so independent in striving what we're doing that actually matrescence may be a way that's bringing us back to going, actually, as a mother, it takes a village to raise a child, is one of the concepts, isn't it?
Yeah, like I do have, and again, it's funny how just things overlap because I have another thing that I'm speaking on in a couple of weeks, and that is this concept of the village, because I do have a bit of a disruptive take on it because I believe the village was a bit of a myth. And I actually don't like when people go, oh, it used to be like a village. I'm like, but did it? Because I remember my mum saying she got the bus to do the shopping, worked all hours God sent. It was an absolute nightmare. Like, and I think it's this like almost elusive thing we talk about, which modern day mothers don't have. And it's like, oh my God, if only I had this village. But the thing I always challenge or have been kind of talking about is I know from personal experience, I am stretched. I have no time, no capacity. I can't be a villager. I would be an awful villager because, yeah, I've got stuff I can bring to the table, but I'm stretched. I'm like looking after my own kids. Like, so the idea of a village is that it's really reciprocal.
Is it not what you're doing is being the villager, but just in a different way?
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's
You don't have to be physically present, but actually what you're doing is you are imparting wisdom and knowledge in order, and that in itself is you actually being part of the village.
being a villager. Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it, actually. Because the concept I kind of replaced this village with is the idea of shared strength.
Yeah.
So for us, the idea of doing it all is like, I'm like, yeah, I'm strong. I can do it all. And actually the idea of sharing that strength was something that when you said earlier, what did you have to unlearn? Like asking for help, saying I couldn't do it and not feeling like a failure. Like I used to think if I got ill, I was weak. If I couldn't do it, I'd failed. And actually it wasn't that. It's just that it took two people to bring up two kids, and that's actually fine. And it's this idea that I'm speaking to a friend about, which is becoming the dependent woman. And that actually being a really positive reframe within the theory of matrescence, that actually, and it's this idea of us having this community. You were saying, you know, when I've found it hard in the matrescence project and when I've thought, oh, is this even worth it? Actually, leaning on people and being dependent on women and asking these women for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually takes a really strong woman in 2026, a strong mother now, to be able to say, "I really need help.
Yeah.
Can you help me with this?"
I mean, I was a single mother for 10 years, and so I relate to that because there was a lot of asking for help, but also there was a bit of badge of honouring of going, "I can do it." Show everybody I could do it. But and I think that when I think about a village though, and the village concept, I'm thinking of like years back, like not even generations back, way before that, because I could get right
Yeah.
into the matriarchy and the patriarchy, and I don't think that we've got
Yeah.
time for that.
But
But
I no, but I do love it because I think what you're touching on, which is something I feel really passionate about, is that I feel like in today's society, the world is happy for us to mother quietly. It's
mhm,
like, can you just go over there in that corner and mother and just do it like away from us because we're all really busy doing business, really busy with world issues. Like, and I feel like there is a resistance to matrescence because I feel like the world is like, oh God, not another menopause. Because what comes with labeling the transition into motherhood with matrescence comes a need for support, infrastructure, help. That kind of leads to like money. Do you know, like if GPs and the healthcare system have a term and it's all in the open and it's all transparent and women are asking for help and women are, you know, matrescencing out in the open, that's kind of a problem because it's a problem for them. It's not a problem for us because all of a sudden works need infrastructure and, you know, they need to be informed, they need educating. And I'm advocating for this, but I feel a real resistance to it because people are like, oh God, not another thing.
yeah, roll
And
the
I'm
eyes.
like, oh my God. This is why I'm speaking even louder about it because I'm like, yeah, it's easier for you if we just quietly get on with and cry behind closed doors and voice note other mums at like 3 a.m. saying, oh my God, this is so hard, isn't it? Yeah, of course that's easier for everyone else.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
like,
I
no, we shouldn't be doing that.
I love it. I love it. So, what would you want someone listening to this to do differently tomorrow?
My hope is that we can talk about matrescence openly. So someone would ask, how's your matrescence going? And I think the world feels like it daren't address mothers because they don't know what to say. Like when that mother returns from work, it's all a bit like, are you all right? Da, da, da. And I think mothers really need acknowledging that we go through a major life transition. It's really hard, but it's not that we're trying to make motherhood any easier by acknowledging matrescence. It's just that by acknowledging matrescence, we are making navigating it easier.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
bringing it above the surface. So I would hope that you would share the word and the concept of matrescence and put a label to and put a name to the process that every mother is going through.
I love it. Well, I think it's very
There is
exciting.
loads.
Well, I do think it's really exciting. And this map or any resources or where can people find you? Where can people find out more?
Yes. So I am very active on Instagram under the Matrescence Project. I am just about to launch a modern day guide to matrescence. So this in the next couple of weeks, I'm pulling it together because I just felt there was a real need to bring about this kind of like matrescence 101, if you want, which is it's like an introduction to a guide to knowing kind of just really clarifying like what is matrescence, like what does it look like, what are the principles of it, like where does it come from. There's a bit about the history and like how it's come to be, I will just add in that, like, if you want to see it in black and white, and there's a bit of controversy around this at the minute. So it is in the Cambridge Dictionary. So it is there for you to see, but it isn't weirdly in any other dictionary. So there is a campaign at the minute called Make Matrescence Mainstream, where you can sign to get matrescence into the other dictionaries.
Oh,
Which,
wow. God,
I mean,
that's a
that
fun
we
fact.
could talk about this in itself, the fact that it's not in the dictionary. It's in one, but
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
fighting at the minute to get it
How
into
bizarre.
those others.
Well, listen, Beth, thank you. I think it's really exciting. And I think it's brave in the sense that you have taken this on, but it also feels that you have this power behind you that's just powering you through, that is making it brave. And in terms of that, looking at the possibilities and the hopes, where if you look at that versus, what any fears may be, it's like, well, yeah, actually there's more in terms of borrowing hope and being able to give some back as well. I think with this too, it's really exciting. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll put your details in the show notes. So if anybody would like to get in touch or to follow, and also follow you under the Matrescence Project on Instagram. But thank you for enlightening me, us, everybody. Bye.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.